a Heart for East Asia podcast from OMF US. OMF's Rodney Pennington chats with U.S. missions mobilizer Michael Wu about his life in ministry and seeing God's goodness and faithfulness in times of suffering and life-changing moments.
Michael, it is exciting to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here. This is a new opportunity for me. Doesn't happen often.
You and I have known each other for quite a long time. Our families have been connected for many years, even in the years that took us all the way back to our time overseas on the mission field when our families were serving over there. And your story is a unique story. It's a beautiful story, but there's also a lot of suffering in your story. And I'd love for the audience to hear the journey that you've been on. But before we get to some of the deeper things to discuss, it'd be good to sort of introduce yourself to the audience, to our listening audience, going back, I think, maybe to your early childhood years and your faith journey, sort of growing up. And how did you become a follower? What was that point where you surrendered your life to Christ, and what was that like?
Yeah, that's a good starting point. I always think of myself as just having a very normal childhood. I'm from the East Coast, Boston area, and my parents were involved in church. So just kind of going through the normal type of vacation Bible school, summer camps. That's where I really met Jesus. Seeing the excitement of camp counselors, I think, really said, I want that, just that excitement, enthusiasm for Jesus. As I finished high school, I did go to a conference, really wanting to share Christ with my classmates in my senior year. So I sort of had that in my mind. And then I wanted to go to Bible school eventually after going to 1 year of college. So I just had this hunger of wanting to learn more about what God had to say for my life. So I did that, then ended up going to teach English in Korea for a year after I graduated. I thought that was sort of my mission experience, just sort of tithed a year of my life to do there. Did that, and then I was going to get on with my life. But God had different plans, obviously. So I did end up going to seminary, and I was thinking to go into church ministries. But I had met Caroline back in that time as a youth pastor down in North Carolina. As I was going through seminary, I was kind of interning at the church, and she was actually on the staff, and she brought a course, a mission course called The Perspectives, which might be very well known to some mission people. But anyway, we didn't know what it was, and it just totally blew us away. We were feeling connected to the mission and the call. And Caroline had actually taught English in China. So I think that was our connection point, because I taught English in Korea. But then hearing about unreached people groups and trying to reach the unreached through this course just really weighed on us. And then through that, we actually ended up going to a bigger conference, Urbana, and that's where we found OMF as far as finding a place to serve.
What's the point where you guys are like, hey, I think there's a connection between the two of us?
It was through the youth ministry. We were going to work on this camp through the denomination. And it was kind of the first year that they were launching this camp. And we had a week together working with kids and just kind of seeing how we interacted with the kids and each other. We just really knew after that 1 week that we were meant for each other. So it was a very fast process. Yeah,
there wasn't an engagement in 1 week, was there?
No, but within the month, when I was in North Carolina, I called my mom and I said, "This is the woman I'm going to marry," and I shoved the phone into her hand. And it was that awkward first meeting, and then we got engaged several months later, and then by the cycle through the school year, I came back because I was going to seminary, and we got married. So it was less than a year. The whole thing happened.
Wow, that's incredible, man. So as you guys you're dating less than a year to the point you get married, it seems like there's probably obvious discussions that missions is maybe the draw for where God's leading you in the future.
She was way more open to it at the time. Again, I think if it wasn't through that course, I probably wouldn't have caught the bug so much, seeing the vision. So, some sort of ministry. We were both feeling very called to serve the Lord somewhere. But yeah, I mean, it happened pretty fast. I think, like, once we were really into learning about what God has for this world. I mean, just all these people who've never heard of Jesus. So we want to be a part of that. Still do.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen to that. So the point where the two of you meet OMF International, have a family by this point?
No. So it's just really within that first year or so of being married, figuring out life. But by the time we were going to, figure out OMF, going to the candidate course. So we're pretty serious about that point. Yeah, we were pregnant, and then we had our first child, 6 months old, by the time we actually went over to the mission field. So
as you're exploring this, you're introduced to OMF, you're starting that journey and exploring, obviously there's other places, other groups that are out there potentially that you could join. What was it with OMF? Why did you guys land together as this is where God's calling us?
Well, again, I think the strategy of reaching unreached peoples was what was on our heart. So we didn't have a particular country or a particular people group. We just knew that this strategy was something that was on our hearts. Like, we wanted to be a part of it. It was very exciting, I think, at that point. Look at what God is doing in all these different parts of the world. So we were kind of matching that with the organization. And that's, I think, when OMF was really starting a new work, a new field that was really in alignment with this, trying to get to the unreached, specific people, not country focused, but people focused. It was a good match. Yeah, we felt very good about that. And just, then we looked at the mission, the vision, the values, and it all just matched up with who we were as followers of Jesus.
Yeah. So as you guys are going through this, I'm assuming you're talking with your families, mom, dads. This is what we're exploring. This is what we're thinking. Here's this organization we're excited about. We love the mission, vision, their values. What's going on there? What's that like? Are they supportive? Is there questions? They think you're crazy?
I think my parents are starting to see a little pattern of craziness of just changing schools, trying like going to Bible school after a year of college, and then just saying, "Oh, look, this is I'm going to go to Korea for a year and teach English." And so it wasn't very unexpected. My mom would say that she had a sense when I was younger that I might be going into ministry just by some of the questions I had about God. Yeah, and then Caroline's family, because she had been a missionary for 3 years in Beijing, it was no surprise to them. I mean, obviously, they wanted us to stay, but they were open for us to leave.
Especially when they have the first on the way, taking the family and the grandbaby babies to come to a different part of the world. What about your church family support? What was that like?
Yeah, I think it was really good. The denomination that we were in, or the church we were in, had a very strong history of missions, but the pastor that we were serving under was very mission minded, and God was doing a lot through the course, through us being there. So other people were feeling the call. I think it was a smaller church, but making a big impact at that time because of the leadership. So they were completely behind us. It was very exciting. Yeah, we were very much in step with the pastor's vision and goals were to get people out to the mission field.
That's good, man. When you're in the process of looking at joining OMF and going overseas to the point that you actually do, what's the timeline on that for you guys?
We had gone to Urbana and found OMF, but we were looking at other organizations too. So we had a list, and we sort of narrowed it down. And then some of their mobilized were coming through town and met with us. I think that was a really important part of like getting to know the organization, having a real live person to talk to instead of just reading through all the paperwork. So we had some discussions about how our denomination could work with OMF. Those didn't work out, but it did give us lots of conversation. And then timing wise, we had both, I feel, been well equipped because we were thinking about ministry. So having some seminary, having church experience. Yeah. So the timeline was quick, I guess, considering what other people do. I was in seminary. We had overseas experience, both teaching English, and we were working in the church. We had a lot of boxes that were already checked off. So when we were, ready to go, it was really about developing the partners and then just working with the dates that they, the timelines that were set. So it was only a couple years, and God was really good. Being in a certain the smaller denomination, we actually had a lot of church connections too. So we had a lot of pastors, a lot of places we could share the vision. So it all came together in a very timely manner. With that being said, it definitely grew our faith having to go through the process of developing a team for support.
So what's the year you guys head overseas? What year?
It was 2003. So we went to candidate course in 2002, and we went to the Urbana in 2001. See, that's kind of confusing because it's the Y2K thing. So I guess they can't. So I guess it was 2000, but then kind of rotates over to the next year. So 2000.
That makes sense because we met you guys in 2006 because that's when we went to the field.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so you're out there. You guys get to the field. You're starting a young family. Early years. What's that like?
Learning language. That's so we're in the main city, learning the language, exploring which people group that we want to work with. We sort of had our parameters, but the Lord was definitely leading in certain ways by different circumstances. The people that we talked to, we kind of visited a couple of different sites, and then we thought, wow, this would be a really good place. Like one thing that was important to us was that we were among the people, not having to drive up into the mountains, say like 2 hours. So they're right there, just when we walked out the door. So that took a little time to figure out, but then as we learned the language, then we knew we were going to learn the second language. So a lot of time in language, it gets discouraging. I wouldn't consider myself this great linguist by any means, but we would always say that between the two of us, we made up one. We'd have pretty good conversations with people, but we were learning to minister in the local language of the people.
Yeah, that's very similar with what I always say about Amanda, my wife, that we worked really well together because she remembers stuff. I don't remember anything. My mind is it just empties quick. But I pick up on tones. It's tonal, and she can't do tones. So she would always remember the word. I'd remember the tone. Together we were great. Apart, it was an absolute mess. But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
So you guys, you're in language study. Your first term, did you do it for 4 years? Was that a 4 and off one?
No, we did a 2, and then came back for 6 months, and then went back. So in our language learning, we learned the trade language of the country we're in, sort of a bare minimum. We passed the basic stuff, but because we were going to be doing the local language starting again, they weren't related. So we were basically learning a second language on top. So then we did 3 years of language in that. So it was a nice break to do the 2 years and then go back to the States.
Yeah. So every fellowship, mission fellowship does it differently. A lot of our cases with OMF, we'll do 4 years, typically 4 years on, 1 year off if you're going long term, but it does vary. It's very case by case. So if you got to do a 2 year, 1 year, or a 3 year, half year, whatever, we work with our workers, but that's what we're talking about for the listener when we talk about, well, what was your first term, second term, those kinds of things, because the timelines vary on those. But there's sort of a traditional four-year on, 1 year off. So you guys come back second term. By this time, the family's growing. Where are you at that point?
We're up to several kids at that point. I mean, it's hard to say. We're probably on our third child around that time. So when we move to our sort of target area, we must have had 3 kids at that point. And then as we were learning the language, kind of the philosophy or the track that we were taking was to actually move us again out to a ministry area, because the thought was, as you're learning the second language, you're using the first language and you're building all these relationships with people, and they're only wanting to talk to you in the trade language because they know you can speak that. They don't want to be talking to you in a really childish sort of way. So once we got up to a certain level on the second language or the local language, we moved to the border of our country that we were living in, and then we would be able to use just the local language as much as possible. So at that point, we're probably on to our 4th child. So our family was growing continually as we were in ministry.
What's that like? You're learning the language. You're learning the new customs, cultures. You're a young family. You're trying to raise kids. What's the experience like?
It's very chaotic. We have to sort of budget our time where, we're very much into both of us trying to do ministry. I know there's different models, but we both had different strengths, and we wanted to use that in the ministry. So we had to take turns having different teachers teach us, which is actually interesting. We didn't have class together learning language. We always did one-on-one type of learning. So we never had to struggle through a class together. That probably would have been a bad thing, just the competitive nature. And then seeing Caroline's language take off, and it was very chaotic. Probably a little slower. You see some of these single guys or girls come in and they just pick up the language so fast. But we were sort of just pacing ourselves, going at our speed, but developing lots of relationships. Again, if you use the local dialect, doors just seem to open up. So that's really a God thing. That was amazing to see how that worked. And then people were always very willing to talk to us with a kid. Like they just want to touch the foreign kid's hair or something because it's just different. They might have never seen a foreigner before.
Yeah, so many stories to get into because it brings up so many memories of the things that we experienced together. When we were on the field, we used to call them God at work stories. So as you're doing this, you and Caroline, you're raising a young family, you're overseas, you're learning language, you're learning new customs, cultures, you're reaching a particular people group. Are there some God at work stories that you were seeing in the ministry, as well as how God was working within your young family?
Yeah, I mean, when you step out and you just are available, you definitely see God at work in many different ways. Probably one of the most impactful things we had was working with a local trying to teach us language, and they also helped us do some stuff around the house, so like a house helper type of person. But we were really able to pour into her life, and we had different people along the way. But when we were finally into our target city, trying to do our work, we were working with this lady, and then after a while, she finally made this statement, and she said, I see you trying to share the gospel with people, and you're using our local language, but it's like so much easier for me to do it. And there's like that light bulb. It's like, that's exactly right. So we can pour into you so that you can pour into the people around you. And she did get it. And through that, I think the gospel could spread a lot faster, like having the local people just get the vision for what's possible.
And the kids, they're young. Their parents aren't from this area. So they're hearing you speak English, probably at home, another language in the community. how's God working? How is God working in some of their lives?
Yeah, I mean, for the kids, we always tried to get them into a local type of setting, trying to develop relationships with neighbors. We had a few birthday parties that were memorable. And then you just get to meet the parents, and that just really does open up doors. Even the first day we moved into the country, there was a relationship that the person did come to know the Lord, and it really carried all the way through. Like, we didn't get to see that, but it was that first start of the relationship, and then other people interacted with this family, and then they really ended up serving the Lord in a wonderful way. So just the relationships of neighbors, you're just coming in, and you never know who you're going to meet, as long as you just kind of keep your eyes open.
Yeah, I love that, because we took a similar approach. Was the things that we did in ministry? It was a family. It was a family ordeal. We didn't want it to just be mom and dad, so we tried to bring them into so many other things, and they're shaped by a whole different customs, cultures, the things that are happening within the one that we're all living in, as well as understanding the things where mom and dad came from, and just seeing it's just a unique faith being lived out. Yeah, it was truly a blessing. So you guys are on the field, you're going through all this. Kids are going through all this. You're bonding as a family. Your experiences. This is a family ministry together. Now, as I opened up, you've suffered a great deal in your lives. At some point, you knew something was happening. How do you bring us into this next phase of your life, where it was obviously things were about to change pretty quick?
Yeah, so we're outside of our country, doing going to a conference, and my wife. So we were on our fifth child by that time, and she was nursing, and she had noticed a bump, and she had talked to multiple friends who were doctors, and asking these questions, but it was sort of one of these things like, oh, because you're nursing, that's kind of a natural thing. It should be fine. But there was still just an inkling inside of her of, I wanted to have this checked out. So when we, went to the doctor, it was a pretty big, unexpected bombshell that she had a cancer, a breast cancer, and they would have just called it like a stage 2, something very simple. And at that point, it was very interesting, because they're just like, oh, we could just schedule you to have a surgery and just have it removed, no big deal. And for us, being overseas in a foreignness, we're like, well, that sounds just like, no way would we just do a surgery in a foreign country like that. So we consulted our friends, and sort of made this game plan to go back to the United States to have that done. So yeah, like when we heard that news, just a lot of things changed. We were planning on going back to the States later that year, but you just sort of drop everything and just completely change the plans to get back to the States, feeling like, oh, that's the plan that is going to work best. So we ended up back in North Carolina for a period.
What's that like, when you know what's happening, and you and Caroline sit down with the kids and share with them?
Well, at that point, we just thought it was a pretty standard type of cancer, because just a lot of, statistically now, there's a lot of cancers out there, and we just thought that was going to be a procedure. But yeah, because of where we were at in the move, just having to move everything around, it was definitely one of the more stressful times, because we were having to move all of our stuff back to the main city, and she was going to go back to the States. So yeah, having to sell off things very quickly, she going back to the States, and then me having to do a lot of this stuff by myself, and then getting 4 kids back to the States by myself was a very long, tedious process. Nothing I'd ever want anyone to have to do. just doing those things. But then, I mean, the God at work was, kind of who stepped up, people kind of helping out, all hands on deck. I just remember another couple. A husband came, drove 2 hours, and just spent like a few days helping pack up boxes, helping do whatever needed to get done. So, there was a stretch where I was on one side of the world just doing logistical things, while Caroline was back getting sort of diagnostics and the help that she needed. So that's sort of how it all started.
Yeah. And then it progresses from there. What happens?
So we're back in the States, and again, thinking from what we had heard, what the original diagnosis was, it was like a surgery procedure. But every time we seemed to go to the doctor, as we were trying to figure out a plan on how to proceed, the news sort of just wasn't going the way we were hoping for. So instead of just a surgery, for example, they're like, no, we're going to recommend chemotherapy. And then like, oh, now we need to do radiation and we need to do these surgeries. So it sort of just kept building up. And then she had to really go through, instead of a stage 2 cancer, oh, it's actually, stage 3 cancer, so everything sort of progressed in the wrong direction, but we were handling it in the best way I think we could. We had a lot of support with us in North Carolina, where the home base was for us. So it was a long, drawn out process as far as figuring out what medical things were there. But
yeah. So Caroline, she was just an amazing person that celebrated life well. And as you guys were going through this, she not only seemed to celebrate life well, but she also celebrated what was next in a very unique way. And you guys are watching this unfold in her life. Yeah, are there some stories about just how she took this new chapter in her life and made sure that it just felt like she didn't want to waste a moment in witnessing, in loving the kids, in providing for them? Yeah, her side of it as she goes through this, and how she took on life and what's to come. How'd that unfold?
Well, I don't know. As far as me sharing the story, that's really only the first part of the story. So there's definitely more to share.
Yeah, go into it. Yeah.
So that first part, there was always this idea that we're supposed to go back to the mission field. So that was really the thing. As we journeyed through all these medical procedures, we were just telling the kids, this is just a pause in our life. This is just a time that we're going to, do life, get the medical treatment we need, and go back to the field. Like we were very much driven to feel like, oh, it was the call that we were going to go back. And after all that medical procedures, we actually got cleared to go back to the field. So that was that's what we thought. That's what we knew, and we felt very called to do that. So that's what we did. We prepared everything and we loaded everything up, and we actually did go back overseas to the original city. So we're starting a whole new work in a sense, just this whole restart. And so we go back to the city that we actually did our language study in. It's a bigger metropolis type of city. And we just started to settle into the new roles that we had. And we thought we're fine at that point. We're like, this is the new work that we're going to undertake in our new roles. We're only a couple months in, and that is really when things hit the fan, so to say. That like this was the moment that was the life-changing moment. And I was actually traveling into another country because the people groups that we were working with are spread out over multiple countries. So I was actually away at the time, and then I get the phone call that things were not right with Caroline. She said like she just felt like half of her body went numb, sort of like a I don't know, like other things were going on. So it was just basically, you need to come home right now. So, it's this, and yeah, I just got on the next plane and went back and then heard what the reports were. And yeah, she was able to get an MRI and then they found spots on her brain. So this was completely left field. We had been cleared by the doctors in the United States to go back overseas. Interestingly, they don't do a brain scan when you get cleared, so we weren't expecting this at all. But basically, it had metastasized to her brain, and it was you definitely need to go home at this point. As we talked to the OMF doctors, they saw this as a very, very bad diagnosis. So, yeah, one of the hardest things I can remember it was being talking to some of our lead doctors, and when everyone else had gone out of the room, she said, "Don't lose your faith over this," because she kind of saw what was going to happen at this point, which we didn't see that. We were always see. So Caroline was a fighter. She believed in healing. She believed in miracles.
Yeah.
She believed that all things were possible. And of course I do too. And so by the time we got back to the United States and got a more thorough diagnosis, there was very limited options as far as what we could do. So she had gone through full radiation treatments before. And so after much prayer and discussion, she had decided that she did not want to do radiation because it was just a choice that as we looked at and researched medical stuff, it wasn't that much of a greater type of outcome like that they were saying if you did radiation, you might have 2 years to live. So that's what we had to tell the doctors. We're gonna do other methods, and then we tried all different type of things, crazy things, things that just different options. Talked to a lot of different people, and it's amazing, all the different research, all the different books, that's out there. So we learned a lot, and I became sort of a, in-house expert myself, just reading as much as I could to try different things, and different doctors were able to help us. But in the end, it was from that moment when we came back to the States the second time, we had it was a 7-month process of gradual decline, and then she went to be with the Lord, and then that's a whole nother story of how of how it worked out. But yeah, she was really amazing. Just to sort of answer that question, she was very focused in the time that she had left. Every opportunity she could to share the Lord, she took it. And I've really feel that last whatever months she had a greater impact reaching her testimony for the people that she knew around the world. Yeah, than maybe the time we were actually in overseas missions, the impact of her testimony through this, through the cancer journey. I think she just impacted a lot of people through that.
Yeah, she so many things to get in here. The way she lived out those days, the way she testified to people around her, and also the way I think that's really cool how you had mentioned she looked at you and said, "Don't lose your faith in this." Because I was going to ask, was there a crisis of faith in this? Was there a moment of, you guys have done so much. You dedicated your lives to serving in the kingdom of God and doing whatever, going wherever, laying down your lives, taking your children on this journey. I spent years and years and years doing this overseas with underage people, and all of a sudden you get this terrible news that first maybe it's manageable, then you learn it's not. Or is there ever a moment, even after Caroline said, "Don't lose your faith"? Is there moments of doubt, of questioning of?
Well, a quick correction. It was actually the doctor that said, "Don't lose my faith."
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I mean, I just thought it was a weird comment at that time because it never really was a question for me. To be honest, that was a time I think the Lord had been preparing me as far as what I was learning about God was the goodness of God. And that was what really carried me through, that God is good. And I don't know why these things happen, but God is still good. So yeah, there really wasn't a question of that. I mean, she asked the question, why am I not being healed? And she didn't understand those type of things. And that, I think that's very reasonable. But as far as, lack of doubting God's salvation, I think she was very strong. I was encouraged by her. I mean, by her walk, it was very difficult, but yeah, God is proven faithful, and I was protected in a sense of that doubt because God was so good, is so good. So I mean, obviously there'll be lots of questions, but
yeah. So the family, as you deal with this, but you see her interaction and her faith journey through this chapter, you kind of hit on some of the God stories through that. Is there anything you want to bring up and share that of how she took this on and made sure that her kids were cared for, you were cared for, even sometimes strangers were knowing they were loved, and there's a God that cares for them.
Well, I think we were able to go to a conference to help process, not the word isn't process, but so we went to this conference where you could interact with other people who had life-threatening type of diseases, and there was counseling and there was kind of suggestions of what you could do to prepare. And she was doing this as she's believing to be healed, but she left videos and some gifts and notes and things to the kids that they're still receiving even now, in sort of some of the memorable things, like a 16th birthday, like a graduation, and like when they get married or have a baby or something like that, like these little gifts. So I have those to give to the kids. So I think that was really good to remember her. So that's just really amazing. I think she had a lot of foresight in these videos, that she basically is telling them, the kids, to keep walking and being used to the Lord, and how much they're loved, and it's just a all encouragement for the kids to continue in their faith.
That's cool that they have that, man. Their mom was able to do that. Yeah, it's beautiful. Her service, I was blessed to be able to be there, and there were so many people there celebrating this incredible life. And what an amazing, faithful woman she was, up to the last moments. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing to be able to. Yeah, you guys face such tragedy and hardships and suffering, but to know, especially as your wife went to be with her Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, there was an excitement about it. You know where she is. She's home, and she's left an incredible legacy. So if others are suffering through situations like this, what might you leave some, because we're not going to end there, because I want to go into where your family is now, but as you guys went through this and you journeyed through this, what might be some advice that you would give some others who might be in situations like this that you kind of learned along the journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think reaching out and having that support of people makes the huge difference. Yeah, there's so many that the church was just there to help. it was just amazing to see how people came through. So don't hold it, find someone to talk to, have people there. And then just to re-emphasize the point that God is good, God is faithful. He has plans. We're not going to know them all, but really how precious life is, and to be able to serve Him in some sort of way is just a privilege. Yeah, life is interesting, that's for sure.
Yes, it is. And it didn't stop for you guys there. Where are things now?
I've always considered myself blessed. So the year following, here I am. So at that moment, it's like I had to move locations, and the kids had to start new schools. I had different sort of job. I've stayed with OMF, but doing different roles. So basically raising, 5 kids with Caroline's family helping. I was just like, what am I supposed to be doing? And there was just this inkling in me, like, God is not done using me in some sort of capacity for missions. So I just put myself out there, and I would say that OMF family, the fellowship aspect, really surrounded me, gave me the space I needed, but was there for me. So that was so amazing. So I continued with OMF on the home side, but yet given the space to do what I needed to do. And then again, that support of people, family, church family, helping me out, doing those things. And then, eventually you just start thinking, well, how am I supposed to do this by myself? So asking the Lord, is there more out there? And through OMF, friends who served overseas were back home, and they were actually at the U.S. office in Littleton, and they were visiting, and they had posted some pictures up on Facebook of what was going on in the Denver area. And they had posted some pictures of them visiting another missionary friend. And this woman was a person I had known because she had come over and taught some English. And we had kind of stayed friends just through Facebook, supporting each other, short-term mission, just little stuff. But I saw some of those pictures on Facebook, and I said, I need to reconnect with that person. And almost immediately, it just felt like this is going to be a good fit. So relatively quickly, we reconnected and visited back and forth, and had some really interesting conversations. And the one she likes to share is the question I asked her if she was willing to have her life really changed. Was she open to that? And she said yes. So I was part of changing her life dramatically by giving her 5 kids. So right now we're still working with OMF. She's joined the OMF family, and she's doing a great job. And we've had another child. So now we have 6 kids, 2 of them in college, and then we have a 3-year-old running around. So yeah, nothing I would have could have planned in any sort of shape or form. But yeah, just kind of having that renewed life of having the opportunity to be in ministry with somebody, in missions, with kids. It's been an amazing journey, even though there's been that heartache.
Yeah, man. It's just thank you for sharing, man. It's just beautiful hearing your story, seeing how God worked from your youth, your family, into missions, into meeting Caroline, starting a young family, being willing to go overseas and do what you were doing, still staying with the fellowship, going through the loss of her and working through that with your family and your kids, and still keeping the faith, still pushing forward, still in missions, remarrying, still growing your family. It's incredible. Any last things for those that might be listening? Words of encouragement, words, maybe some thoughts about how things that God grew you in. Yeah, just open it up to any last sort of thoughts or words or of counsel or anything that you would like to give to those who are listening to your story, and how you would sum that up.
I would just say that God has got you covered. He's got something out there for each and every one of us, whether it's going thousands of miles overseas or just across the street. But be willing to take that next step, whatever that is. And normally it requires faith, and it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. I mean, to be able to serve the Lord is just really the greatest thing you can be involved in. And, God has designed you to do something. So, figure out what that is, step out in faith, and then just let him do all that work, and just be along for the ride, really. So, yeah, thank you so
Amen.
much. Yeah, thank you for letting
Thank
me share. It's been fun to sort of reconnect with you, to see you, and yeah.
Yeah,
Bless
brother.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for all you're doing, for fighting the good fight, for continuing on raising those kids to be godly leaders of the future. Yeah, it's beautiful to see where God's taking you through life, and the ups and downs, and how you and your family have kept the faith and you keep pushing forward. So thank you for being so willing to share.
Yes, God bless.
To bless you too, brother. Take care.
To learn more about OMF, visit us at omf.org/US.